Why, yes, I did cut my bangs by myself. Thank you for noticing. Hello everyone, my name is Jamie and welcome to my channel. Today we're doing another Dollar Tree book review. I'm trying to be quiet because it's late and we actually have somewhere to be tomorrow. Today I'm going to be talking about Swimmer Among the Stars, a collection of stories by Kanishk Tharoor. So a little backstory. From what I can tell from the back of the book, Kanishk Tharoor was born in Singapore but grew up kind of bouncing across the world from Geneva, New York, etc. And actually when I went to Google to see if there were other books by this author that I could get my hands on, the first thing on Google was like Kanishk Tharoor, son of Shashi Tharoor, and apparently Shashi Tharoor is like a high status person, like a diplomat or something like that, who has also written a bunch of books. Don't know anything about politics, especially not international politics or ambassador, diplomats, things like that, but it seems like his father is a very important man, and I'm sure his mother is as well. I think I've mentioned previously that collections of short stories, anthologies, things like that, they're a little bit difficult for me to read because if one or two of the short stories are boring or badly written or something like that, I kind of just put the book down and never pick it back up because why would I? I've already read a good short story. I don't really need to see the others. There's not like a through line or like a narrative that needs to finish. So it is saying something when I can get through a collection of short stories, especially if like all of them are amazing. 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 short stories, and I will say I think 2 of them I didn't really read. I kind of skimmed, but all of the other ones I read full out and I loved like all of them. This book it's different from the other short story collection because it's not like whimsical and funny and like kind of surrealist. Although this is a little bit surrealist, it's more magical realism. The world is a vast and wonderful place, and culture is beautiful and people are beautiful, and that's kind of the themes of this book, and I think that's really interesting. And there is kind of a through line. You can hear my laundry in the back. I know you can. There is kind of a through line of culture and culture being owned, and also like people traveling and sharing their histories and their cultures like that. That is kind of like the themes of these stories within this book, within this collection I should say. The stories aren't like connected to each other or anything. They're just like little pieces of complete narratives, which is really nice and really cool. I gave this book 4.75 stars out of 5 stars, just because there were some stories that I personally didn't think were good, but the writing style, the content, and the themes of the stories were all so well done and so interesting and so cool to think about and stuff. And it is really cool that I found this at a Dollar Tree because I definitely, hold on, it was originally $25. Okay. I wouldn't pay $25 for this, but I definitely would pay, I'd say $10, $15. Very glad I found this at Dollar Tree. Let me explain some of the short stories. So my personal 2, maybe 3 favorite. I'll do my top 3. Actually, the titular story, Swimmer Among the Stars, is probably one of my favorites. I'd say it's my second favorite. So it actually is about a woman who is the last speaker of her native language, and so there are some people coming to kind of document her language. The short story is just really her perspective, trying to talk to these people, making jokes and ruminating on the idea that she is the last speaker of this language, and it's more of a thematic like concept story of what would it be like to be the last speaker of this language. It's very vague. You can't pinpoint what language it is or where in the world they are. It's just people from a fancy college have set up their fancy microphones and are recording her speak. Everything is in English. It's like all translated. She's talking and she's singing songs in her language and translating that and trying to talk about the syntax, and she's talking about how you can't really explain her language and how this language would be considered dead long before she actually passes and whatnot. And it's very sad and very interesting to like think about what it would be like to be the last speaker of your language. And the actual title, I think there's a beautiful line. I say this all the time, there's a beautiful line, but there is a really really gorgeous line. So the actual title comes from her talking about this story, and she has to translate the word astronaut into her language. And obviously there's no word for astronaut in her language, so she makes up a word, and it translates to swimmer among the stars. And she says this line about how swimmer among the stars is always going to mean astronaut, but astronaut is never going to be translated into swimmer among the stars. And I think that line just kind of hit me, and I was like, you're right. Especially since I was just reading Babel, and how like translations and like specifically translating into English loses so much in taking foreign words and making them fit into this Eurocentric view of language. We do a disservice when we translate things, because these are actual things that people do. They go and like try and transcribe dead languages, like before the people who speak them die, they try and like record it and try and translate it and whatnot. But how do you translate an entire language, especially if there's only one person? And you know, I don't even think I could describe how like the syntax and rules of English work. Like, I did not do very well in school. I didn't do very well in English class when it came to grammar and syntax. And so like, how is, you know, the only speaker of a language supposed to like think about that? And the whole idea of keeping this language in existence rests on one person's shoulders. And she even talks about that, about how this language is a burden to her now. Such a good story. Such a good story. I think my favorite story is actually Portrait with Coalfire. And this is set up as kind of like a conversation between a photographer for a magazine. It's just labeled magazine. They never actually say the name, but it's very much implied to be similar or akin to National Geographic, talking with a subject of one of his photographs that he recently had published. And the photographer had sent the magazine to this guy and his family as kind of thanks for being a subject of his, you know, photographs, whatever. And the guy was like, we love the magazine, we love it, thank you so much for giving it to us, it's so great, you know, we're kind of a celebrity in my little village now. Oh, I should say that the guy comes from a third world country in a small little village where they're coal miners. Coal mining is like the only thing that they do, right? And he's like, thank you so much for taking these pictures and sending me the magazine and you know, all of this stuff. My village is really happy that, you know, we were featured. And the photographer's like, thank you, oh my gosh, that's so nice. I never get to like talk to my subjects after I photograph them, right? And then the guy starts talking about the actual photo that was used in the magazine, and it's of him while he was working, and he's like sweaty and grimy and sad, and he's got like dirt on his face and whatnot. And the guy's like, I didn't really appreciate this photo that you used, and there's a guy in the background, it's one of your people, one of your photography people, he's smiling. The photographer's like, I'm sorry you don't like the photo, I mean, you know, it's the one that my editor, you know, chose or whatever. And the guy starts talking about how the guy in the background who's smiling is laughing at him. Is that why you took the photo? To make yourself feel better and to pity me and to laugh at me? And the photographer's like, no, I don't get to choose the photos. Like, my editor chooses the photo. And he keeps trying to get his editor in. The guy from the picture is like, no, I want to talk to you. I know you. You know me. You came to my village. You took pictures of me and my family. You took a wonderful picture of us all smiling together and happy and whatnot. Why didn't you use that photo? And the photographer's like, dude, I don't choose them, you know, I wanted to show you guys in a natural, like, this is what you do, like, this is, you weren't posed, whatever. And the miner is like, why does that matter? You should publish the one with me and my family where we're looking happy and we look nice. Why did you want to post the photo where I look gross and grimy and stuff? And it's just supposed to open up this conversation of trauma voyeurism, kind of photography in general. Those kind of photography people, they are a big part of this. I don't want to put a lot of blame on that, because a lot of times they do, you know, bring awareness to situations. But when people go to less fortunate areas and take pictures of them, and the photographer or the crew or the organization is the only person who benefits from bringing awareness to the less fortunate, that's when it gets like really gross and kind of like capitalistic and not right. And so this story kind of opens up like the people in those photos have lives, and if obviously you are just taking a photo of like the worst moment, it really shows that like these magazines and these photographers, they write a narrative around these people without giving a full story, just to make like more fortunate people feel sorry for them. And it really reminds me of this one famous photo, I think from National Geographic. It might actually be from Time magazine, I'm not exactly sure, but it's of a young girl, a young Middle Eastern girl with very vibrant green eyes, like beautiful green eyes, and she's a gorgeous looking girl, but her head is uncovered and her face is fully visible. And that picture has been passed around. You've probably seen it on Pinterest. Like, I don't want to show it here, even if I could edit it in. That picture, it's a very iconic picture here in the West. But the story behind it is that the photographer went to like a school, I believe, and saw this girl and kind of asked her to remove her head wrap, and she was so uncomfortable. She didn't want to do it. She didn't want to be photographed at all, but the photographer just kind of kept pressuring her to do it. And I don't think he forcibly made her do it, but I think she was in a situation where she was made to feel uncomfortable and wasn't able to refuse. And then her picture of her indecent, she considered herself indecent in that picture, is been reposted and is all over. It's like I said, it's an iconic photo. And so this young underage girl was made to reveal herself in a way she didn't feel comfortable with, and yet like the entire Western world sees that as this iconic Middle Eastern girl, this like beauty of the East. And it's like, see like this story really puts into perspective that other side of the photo. And it's like, you just see what the photographer wanted you to see, and it's like, oh my god, it's one of those things where you just gotta remember that like the West is really fucked up. I would say a lot of these stories had themes of not the West versus the East, but like showing another side of the East, the Eastern and Middle Eastern world. There's one story about an archaeologist who finds a British sword on a dig, like a very beautiful sword, and he arranges for it to be taken by the Indian Museum, the like National Museum of India, and he's trying to explain that like the British Museum has stolen all of our artifacts. Why can't we steal it as well? Like, that's what he's trying to do. He's like a vigilante archaeologist, which I thought was kind of funny. The British Museum, that's a very topical argument right now, because the British Museum has actively refused to return artifacts to Greece and definitely to East and South Asian countries, even though they definitely should. They definitely should. But I will say that wasn't one of my top 3 stories. My third top story was called The Fall of an Eyelash, and it's about this young woman who was exiled from her country, took refuge in a European country. I believe it's implied to be Scandinavian or just Northern European. And her husband teaches her this tradition of when an eyelash falls, you make a wish and then blow the eyelash away. And she kind of gets obsessed with this, and it's beautifully written. It's very short. It's one of the shorter stories, but it's beautifully written. She like wishes for small things at first, but then they start to come true, and so finally she starts wishing for bigger things, and she wishes to see her family again. Remember, she's been exiled from her country. Her brother had to come across the border, and so now she's just like trying to frantically get an eyelash to fall so that she can wish for her brother's safe return. And that one, I don't want to say too much about that one, because that story is actually like really, really, really beautiful, and it's so short but so well done in such a wonderful way. I will say some of these are kind of like high concept. There's one story about like all of the United Nations having to stay up in a hotel in space while the Earth is like slowly being destroyed, and I don't know if it explains why the Earth is being destroyed, but just that it is. Maybe it's climate related, I'm not sure. But all of the United Nations representatives are just named after their country, so it's like Mexico and Luxembourg are having an affair with each other. It's like really interesting. But it's high concept. It's like I don't know if I really understood that one truly, but it was still like very well atmospherically written. Just kind of interesting. Like what would the United Nations do up in space? Like, that's so weird. And then other ones are like really low concept. Like, there's one about an elephant being transported from India to Morocco, I believe. And it really just is an elephant's travel across the sea. It wasn't really very high concept, but it was very well done. That was one of the ones that I skimmed because I didn't really care about an elephant going across the sea, but it was, what I did read was actually really well done. If you're into one of those more slow, like just talking about things, that's a story for you, but not for me. I'm more slow character, not slow plot. Like I said, I really, really am glad that I found this book. I will be on the lookout for Kanishk Tharoor's other works. I will definitely be reading more when he comes out with it. Right now, I couldn't find any other things published yet, although he might have other short stories in like magazines and journals and stuff. Short story writers are different than like narrative or genre fiction writers, where they're like book. Short story writers are like magazine, journal, magazine, collective works with other authors, my own book of short stories. And I'm like, I just want it all in one place, please. Just please put it all in one book. So, but if there's another book, I will definitely be reading more from him. If you see this out in the world, definitely pick it up, especially if you're into like short stories, magical realism, atmospheric, and beautiful writing. It wasn't purple in the sense that it was like overly written or anything. It was just beautiful, poetically written. That kind of writing style that's very common in short stories. A lot of these books had like a Mediterranean, Southeast Asian inspiration to them. It's beautiful. Look at this. Look at this cover. And Swimmer Among the Stars is just a beautiful name. There were just a lot of beautiful lines, but also lines that made me think. I don't know. This book was just so good. There's no other books from this guy. That sucks. He really struck gold. Alrighty, if you liked the video, you can give it a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below with your favorite short story, and maybe I can give it a read. I guess. Bye! Why must you do this with no pants on? I'm gonna post your ass.